Imagine yourself under a starry sky, around the warm glow of a sacred fire, where speakers gather to share their wisdom and insights. Creating a sacred space where all are welcome to warm their hands. Here are your hosts, Sarenth Odinson, Snow, Cabra, and Emily Streaking Fate. Discuss spirituality, mythology, animism, and culture around a virtual sacred fire. Won't you join us around Grandfather Fire?
Hail to our holy ones of exchange, of trade, of teaching, learning, and instruction. Hail to our holy ones who made ways open, who made new ways, who walked old roads, who saw the ways open. Hail to our holy ones who solidified partnerships, who brought people together, who brought wisdom, who taught how to live together. Hail to the blessed ones who walked the ways that we could connect, who connected the ways that we could connect, who maintain the ways that we can connect. Hail to the blessed ones who bring the bounty of accumulated wisdom and knowledge together, who bring the wisdom of countless fireside chats together, who bring the storytellers together. Hail to the blessed ones who teach us to walk in beauty, who teach us patience, who teach us understanding. To our good and powerful ancestors, we thank you for your guidance, for your wisdom. We thank you for your clarity and your judgment. We thank you for all the ways that you teach us, have taught us, and will teach us. To the spirits who guide our steps, who live in this world with us, who walk the ways between, we thank you for your friendship. We thank you for your lessons, and we thank you for our relationships always. Oh, holy ones, who have brought all these peoples together, who have brought all these spirits together, who have brought people from across the world, across the oceans, across space and time together in this time between, in this time apart, in this time that is all. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Let's smile. Welcome, welcome, welcome to another Around Grandfather Fire. This is episode 141 with my good friends and co-hosts Snow and Emily Streaking Fate. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing, Snow?
I'm okay. Life is lifing. The sun keeps rising and the world keeps spinning. I suppose if we're doing the whole transparency and being honest thing, I did have a recent family member pass, which happened on the 25th of October. I was going to say last week at time of recording, but I don't know if that is last week at time of recording. Either way. So yeah, that happened. Life rolls on. I mean, I already talk about and write about death enough as is and dress like I'm in mourning all the time anyways, so externally you wouldn't necessarily notice much difference there. But yeah, that happened. Yeah, otherwise, just keeping on keeping on. I've been on a bit of a break of things, but recorded some of my own podcast episodes. Those are scheduled to go out over the next couple of weeks. And yeah. What about you? Either Emily or Saranth.
Go ahead.
I have been still recovering my energy back from my last initiation at the end of September. And starting along some of those paths that I chose. And starting to do more group ritual work again. Really excited about the time of the year and going into the colder, darker, wintry months, and looking forward to having more energy back and doing more work. A lot of ancestor stuff, which is kind of a year-round thing, but I think everybody's ancestors get a little bit more talkative this time of year, so that's been fun. How about you, Seth?
I've actually been a little better on the overtime at work, so I've been getting more sleep lately, which has been nice.
Miracles do happen.
I can be taught. Kicking and screaming, but I can be taught.
The dog's not that old yet.
Give it time. The major project that I've been working on for the past week or two is, for some reason, I got this bite in the ass to do a poem a day for the runes. So I'm up through, I think, Kanaz now, and I've got another one that's going to drop tonight. So I'm looking forward to this being done, but I'm also kind of excited because it's a new way of expressing my relationship with the runes. The I ams were really interesting. The first rune that came to me in this fashion was Hagalaz of all the runes, and she demanded I sit down and write this poem out. And I was like, well, I've only got my phone. Well, that'll work. So sit and write. So that is how this started. And I was like, well, if I've written one for you, I've got to write one for all of them now.
Yeah, I'd been seeing those coming out. It's a cool project to see going. And plus, you have the advantage of you wear your runes on your sleeves. So if you get stuck, it's really easy for you to check what's next.
Yeah. You're not wrong. I am a living cheat sheet. So with the that mini project going on, I've stepped away from a lot in the last couple of months now, and so it's just kind of assessing where I'm at now that I have a little bit more breathing room and where I want to be. The close of the year coming up, which is wild to me because it feels like we just got this year started. This year for me has felt very, very fast. So a lot of my thought processes right now are looking to what's left of this year, what I want to commit myself to next year, spiritually, physically, financially, mentally, the whole shebang. Not necessarily like resolution style, because I have never been able to really keep those. It's more like keeping a goal for the next year in mind, as opposed to I'm going to do this thing. I don't know. Resolutions seem a bit too much like oaths, and I have a really hard time keeping resolutions. So I'd rather not get myself into a spiritual quagmire first off when I start the new year. I am looking forward to this election season being done because all of my ads are targeted at me with political ads, and I am damn sick
Is
of
the
that.
US having an election? No one said.
Oh, God. I can't even with you.
Well, at the time of recording, I believe it is happening next week. And as they said
Yes.
on a weekly political comedy show on Friday night, Americans, you can go out and vote, and you can vote whichever way you want, but with a certain person. We'll see you next Tuesday.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it, if for nothing else, then we have some rad stickers in Michigan. Because we had this competition this year, and a whole bunch of kids designed stickers for the I voted sticker that they hand out now. So I'm looking forward to hopefully getting a werewolf one.
Yeah, same. I'm really hoping for a werewolf sticker. I'll be very disappointed if I go in to vote on the day and I do not get a werewolf sticker. So we'll see.
I mean, we don't get stickers when we vote over here. They don't have to try and bribe us with kids' rewards, you know.
I mean, we're
Like a
Americans, we're
dentist
childish
trip
like
for
that.
We
kids.
get stickers and candy.
Well done, you brushed. Have a sticker.
Our local elections office was actually handing out candy to people. I can't say anything. It's like a dentist office with voting stickers and shit. Oh, we are a deeply unserious country. I am sorry, the rest of the world.
I got nothing.
I got nothing either. We don't have compulsory voting. We have this shit. Oh man. So that's what's on my docket. Like I've already got my ballot laid out and I'm already knowing who I vote for. So it's like, okay, just gotta walk in and do it. Oh God. So that's what's on my mind is this election and then next year. That's about it. Like maybe Yule. I've actually started a couple of projects for Yule gifts. So that's exciting because I just got some Dremel attachments so I can actually do wood and antler discs proper now. Oh.
See, I never
Yeah.
think about Yule until everyone else starts talking about it. Like it just doesn't occur to me. But I mean, I think part of
Which
that
is hilarious to me because you're part of Skith
Well, yeah.
Blathner, and there's a
I
big
mean,
Yule
part of
push.
that's probably just because I come from a family where so many people had December birthdays, myself included. So
Oh,
it's,
same.
you know, people are like, oh, hey, Christmas. I'm like, oh, yeah, there's that as well in that week. Yeah.
I get it.
I'm like, oh, yeah, that's the middle day where the house is full of wrapping paper we have to chuck. Got it. Well, you don't see anyone because they spend half the day in the kitchen cooking and everyone eats it and goes, wasn't worth the time it took.
Oh my God.
That's why. That's why when I moved out and was living with my ex, we were like, let's just go get Indian takeaway for Christmas. It's so much easier, and we'd rather eat that.
That's totally fair. Also, that is hilarious, Claire. Snow's one of those people with a birthday near Yule. I get it because mine is December the 16th. So it's like 5 days from Yule and what, 10 days from nine
For
nine
the
days,
for the
8
people
days, whatever.
listening, Patreon members at certain tiers can join the live Zoom calls and participate in the chat. But in this instance, not only that, the person contributing is also my fiance, so I'm kind of being heckled at the same time.
I
Yeah.
appreciate
It's
it.
fantastic.
I encourage heckling.
I mean, the other co-hosts are dating, so you know.
All right, so I think that's
Anyway.
enough preamble. How about you? So, would you like to introduce
I would
Lannan?
love to. So,
Excellent. Please
our
do.
guest tonight, between his work on helping people learn about and practice a living 21st century religion based on the beliefs of the pre-Conquest Mexica, and his artwork, both devotional and secular, Lannan is a very creative and devoted pagan with now over 2 decades of experience. Lannan is a practiced Teotecatl and Zen Buddhist, a spirit worker, a mystic, and an artist. His focus on monasticism and contemplation has led to a pivot in recent years towards exploring what pagan monasticism, particularly in the 21st century, may look like. So, Lannan, welcome to Around Grandfather Fire.
Thank you for having me. It's good to see some of you face to face for the first time, and good to see you again, Saren.
Gods, we've been following each other's blogs for what? Probably a good 12 years now.
My latest blog post, I was talking about going back and removing posts and preparing it for a big project. And I went back to my old blog before Rotwork, and I was even following you then. That was like back in like 2012, I think.
Was this on WordPress or LiveJournal?
WordPress.
Okay, okay. I must have just gotten on WordPress a year or
Yeah.
two previous
It's been
to
a
that.
while.
Gods. Yeah, it has, hasn't it? Wow.
Time flies when you're worshiping.
Telling you. Oh, wow.
Yeah, I saw your recent
So
post on kind of 10 years of Rotwork. So congratulations on that.
Yeah, thank you.
that's a hell of a milestone.
Yeah, it's weird to be a pagan for so long
Mm. So I guess
because
since we're kind of, oh, sorry, go on.
oh no, I was just saying because it seems like most people drop off before then. So your cohort of people that have been around,
Mhm.
as years go by, just gets smaller and smaller and smaller,
Mm.
and you kind of
So
all know each other.
yeah, kind
Yeah,
of end up recognizing
yeah.
faces and yeah, names and online handles and things.
Yeah.
So I guess kind of with 10 years of Rotwork then, what has that been like? How what have you learnt from 10 years of Rotwork? And how much has your kind of practice and such evolved in that? I know a decade is a long time, so
Yeah, a decade is a long time. Even when part of it was the pandemic, that just made it all the weirder too. What have I learned? I kind of started Rotwork on a just kind of a whim, just because um, I wanted to take just have a little bit more mature tone to my blogging compared to what I had been doing when I first started with the previous blog, which was called Mountain Path and Pool, and I was just kind of exploring, and
Holy shit, that
that
was
was me.
you? Sorry, it just clicked.
That was me.
Sorry, please go ahead.
Way back, right? Way back. This is now more than half of my life. This is now 2/3 of my life.
That's buck wild. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
just it blows my mind.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like, yeah, I sensed sort of this change happening in my practice. I was kind of like dicking around less and less, and I kind of had ideas that I kind of wanted to hone in on and write about and start investigating. That's kind of when I started Rotwork, and that's kind of near when I started kind of thinking about like collapse theory too around then. And Sarah, if you know what I'm talking about when I say that. And I was kind of thinking about, gods and spirits of the Anthropocene and of oil and all of these things. And I
Mm.
was getting the sense of a deity being that I was calling La Abuela at the time, the grandmother. This female, feminine spirit of basically the whole of our mistakes as a species, just this vast thing. Yeah. And come to find out, like last year, I did in Teotecatl what's called a tonali reading. So your tonali is your birthday, basically. So you look up your birthday in the old Mexican calendar and you find out who the deities are and how they all align and fit together on that day. They're basically the deities that give you your animating essences, your heart, your mind, your emotions, your luck, what have you. And I found out my Tonali patron, which is the biggest one, the most important one, is a deity named Tlazalteotl, and she is basically La Abuela. So I have spent 10 years learning about this goddess of rot, basically. Uh, unbeknownst to me until very recently who that was. So that was very exciting.
Was it kind of weird and jarring when you found out who that was, having been kind of navigating that for so long?
I think I laughed. I think I just laughed because it's like,
Mm.
of course, you can't make this stuff up. Like you really can't. And you know, it's easy to kind of think that the deities are, you know, they speak in riddles and they're very subtle and they'll send very subtle messages and pull little strings and things. No, they will punch you in the face sometimes. Most times, actually.
So, sort of going back then, sort of before that, how did you originally come to paganism and polytheism? And
That goes way back. When I was in third grade, I was given a book, a children's book called The Winged Cat. Um, just like any other children's book, except it was painted on papyrus and it was painted and illustrated like old, you know, Egyptian hieroglyphic illustrations. And it was a story of lowly um, a lowly servant in the temple of Bast and some lord, some angry lord, frustrated lord or something. He kills one of the temple cats, and this was her favorite cat. And she mummifies the cat. She does the whole funerary thing for the cat, and the cat comes back, and it's like, whoa, we need to stop this guy. It's a very cute story, and they go down to the underworld, and speaking of cats, and I don't remember what they do, but they I don't know, they get the guy in the end. Or no, Ammit eats the guy in the end. They weigh his heart, and he's found wanting, and so he eats his heart, and everybody's okay. But I was just fascinated by this depiction, this vernacular depiction of a culture with just these very casual, very matter of course relationships with multiple deities. And I already kind of, as a Christian, raised Christian, Catholic, you need to go away. Various Christians, Catholics, whatever. As a kid, it made sense to me to make offerings to God, right? Like, oh, I appreciate God and Jesus. I want to give him things. So I remember when I was a little kid, my grandmother would take me to one of the Catholic churches and I would bring little things, and I would leave them on the altar as gifts, little pretty rocks and things. And I was giving them to God. And I remember I went back once and they were still there. I hid them in a potted plant or something, and they were still there, and I was very disappointed. But it just always made reciprocity always made sense to me, and the tangibility of divinities in the world, the materiality of divinities in the world always made sense to me. And it I always knew that there were other gods other than God. But I just, we didn't do that. We didn't worship them until I was oh yes, and I actually took up worshiping Bast as a 9-year-old. I built a shrine for her in the backyard and put all kinds of pretty things on there, and it was very fulfilling. It was very it really touched something deep down inside me, and it made sense on a fundamental human level. And it didn't last very long, obviously. I couldn't get away with it forever. Yeah, my cat is freaking out. She never does this either, which is really funny. She's usually upstairs.
You said Bass, and she's just absolutely
Yeah.
lit.
The old lady knows what's up. And yeah, and so when I was 12, I met some weird kids in my new school, and they handed me the Witch's Bible. like, look at this cool book. Look what I got. I don't even know where she got it because this is before Amazon. This is before, I was 12 years old. I wasn't buying books online. My friends weren't buying books online. So I don't know where she got this amazing, crazy, cool book. And I was, going through it, and it just blew my mind. It just obliterated my sense of reality, basically. Like, okay, this is real. This is how the world works. And deep down, I'm like, I knew it. I always knew it. And so I was 12 years old, and I'm like, hey, Bast, I'm coming back. So I had Bast and Anubis, and they were my patron deities and all that stuff. And I basically been pagan ever since I was like 12 years old. Definitely not Wickish anymore. I don't do witchcraft. I don't do craft. My practice is even taking me away from divination at this point. But I have been a devotional polytheist, basically on a quest to understand reality since then. It's pretty much been the thrust.
So I'm curious then how you kind of got from this sort of fascination with ancient Egypt and these sort of relationships with deities attested to in Egyptian mythology to then the kind of Mesoamerican practice and the reconstructive work that you're now more known for.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think Bost was there for me when I was younger in my formative years as sort of like a motherly figure, obviously. Um, and she protected me when I was doing some really stupid stuff at the time. Um, I was doing, I was a 12, 13-year-old doing trance work, doing ecstatic work, and I didn't even know that I was doing that. Um, Playing with Ouija boards and conjuring things with my friends and doing all kinds of things. And none of us, we were shielded from some of the horrific things that can happen in a situation like that when, kids are fucking around. Um, so I think in kind of high school, I took a few years. I stepped back a little bit. I didn't go back to Christianity, but I was kind of starting. I was reading about other things. I was reading about Taoism and Buddhism and other religions, Sikhism, um, uh, deism, and then in college, I really felt a calling. I felt sick without gods in my life, and that's when I went back and I approached Bost again. I'm like, I want to do this again. Um, it wasn't a literal conversation, right? But I basically said, I want to do this again. Is this right for me now? It was right for me then. Is it right for me now? And it wasn't. So I I was working on a comic at the time, still working on it, Aquapunk. But I was in some classes that were going through Latin American art from the ancient to the contemporary. And I was just sucked into the art. The sculpture, the textiles, the frescoes, the bas relief carvings. The beauty just sunk into the marrow of my bones, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. And so I'm like, well, and a lot of it is religious, right? So I'm going through my books and just pausing at the depictions of the gods, and I'm going, ooh, I'm getting that tingling on the back of my neck, getting goosebumps, and I'm like, okay, there's something here, and I think it's time for me to figure out to really learn where I came from, because that's where half of my family's from. Half of my family's from Mexico. They don't really talk about it. And unfortunately, there's a lot of family history that's being lost with the deaths of relatives and things. So I kind of knew that it was time to bridge the gap between myself and my ancestors and learn about them through their gods. I originally approached the Maya deities, actually. See if I can pronounce it. The Ku'uho'ob, I believe, is the plural form of gods. And they taught me a lot. But after a few years, they're like, no, if you want to go to the gods of your people, you need to really go to the gods of your people. You are not Mayan. You are Mexican. You are descended from those people. So it's time for you to go. So I said, okay, fine. You go where the gods tell you to go. And one god came with me, and that is Chuck. He is a Yucatec Maya storm deity, and I have been worshiping him for 14 years now. And I believe he came with me because he is kind of everywhere in Mesoamerica. He's not localized like a lot of the other deities are, and he's not quite as thoroughly enmeshed in the rest of their myths. He's almost kind of more omnipresent, omniscient than I have found a lot of the others were. So he's stuck with me. It's funny. I specifically remember having a vision very early on before I approached Chuck of Bast and Anubis kind of handing me over to this thundercloud emerging from a cave. And I'm like, oh, what's that? I have no idea what that is. And, 2 years later, Chalk is now my primary deity, a storm god. So that was kind of like the last time that I heard from Bast. And now I belong to a storm god forever. So, yeah, Teotecatl has been a wild ride. I've met a lot of really great people, and we have a great community now. And I've learned so much about my own family, in building this community with people.
So what I'm hearing is you have long experience in not only mysticism, but having to completely flip your life upside down and follow new pathways as they emerge. And that seems, having done that a couple of times, simultaneously terrifying and exciting. How did you get through it?
To me, it was just all exciting because I was always learning. I was always developing. I was always going where the God sent me. I wasn't going anywhere else. So doing what they wanted me to do, even when what they want me to do is what I want to do. I know I'm on the right path. Yeah. And I guess to bring another element into it is I think one of the biggest things that has shaped my practice since, my formative teeny bopper years is my bipolar disorder, which kind of emerged around that time. So part of what I struggle with, part of what empowers me, part is just what complicates my practice is that being pulled in separate directions. For me now, usually it's two directions. It's bipolar. But yeah, part of the struggle has been trying to find out, am I being pulled in this direction, or is it, maybe the hypomania pushing me in this direction? Because that's something that's just like exciting that my brain is latching onto. But most of the time, most of the time, the gods tell me when I'm fucking up. So I trust that sense.
I mean, you've been developing that sense for all of your life. I would hope by now you trust it, and that development of trust is a long-term thing, right? Because we in the polytheist community, we're always talking in some way, shape, or form, no matter where you've been in the last 2 decades,
Yes.
about discernment,
Yes.
right? That has been like our bugbear. Like we've been hammering on this for the
Yeah.
whole time we've been writing. Either one of us,
All of
any
us.
one of us, really. Yeah, all of us. And to me, like, there comes a certain point where you either get the sense that you can hear, understand, or make out when your gods are actually trying to tell you something, or you just can't. And that's, there's no shame in that, and there's nothing that makes me better or less than somebody else by having that sense. It's just
It's a
it's a
hard
skill,
skill.
right?
It's a tool, right? You can use it to hammer stuff that shouldn't be hammered, or you can use it to hammer nails, or you can use it to bludgeon somebody. It's a tool.
You mean not everything's a nail? Shit.
Yeah.
It is when you're the hammer.
There you go.
To bring it back around, it is when you're
Seinfeld.
American. Yeah.
Screwdriver will work. Bam.
Myself included.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you, Sarenth, that it is a tool that you can develop, but I do think also it's a tool that you can at times still misplace and forget that you have, and then rediscover it and reintegrate it.
That is a very fair point. I did not mean to imply like it's a one and done. Okay, you've built this muscle. You're good now. No, that's
And
a
then
fair
any
point.
given day, you're maybe not as good as other days, or a second or third opinion can help. Things like that.
Yeah, maybe less like a hammer and more like more just like cooking. Being able to cook, it's a life skill, right? You may be able to learn how to cook really well, but on a day to day, you may just feel like shit one day and just eat a tub of ice cream.
Some people do it professionally or do it very passionately, and some people do it because we know if we don't, we will die.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if we had the choice, we wouldn't. Cook, that is, not die.
Thank you for clarification. I was just going to ask. It's funny. Like I thought it was hot shit when I learned how to do a demi-glace, and then my brother's like, "Yeah, so you just learned how to do that, right?" I was like, "Yeah, look at me. I'm actually cooking." He's like, "Oh, honey.
It's
Oh,
when people
honey."
talk about how food tech and cooking classes in school are really easy, I go, explain how I failed then. It's like, I know how I failed. I'm just disproving your argument that it's really easy. Because I did fail.
I am living proof that this is not universally
Yeah.
true.
I mean, part of it is apparently if it helps if you actually fill in and then hand in your coursework. Apparently that helps. But
Oh,
Jesus.
now I find out.
Anyway. Right?
Shit, I just thought I was going to show up for a free meal. I don't understand.
I mean, my parents went to parents' evening one day because, like, my sister had the same teacher, and they were like, "Well, I appreciate the fact that they were honest about the fact they only took the class because they had to." And I was like, "Well, why wouldn't I say that? Well, I'm gonna be honest. Like, I want to be here. I'm here because I have to be."
Honestly, it's always better.
Anyway,
honestly,
yes.
Honestly, sometimes relationships with gods are kind of like that. I'm like, I'm here because I have to be.
And then you don't hand in your coursework and the god fails you. Yeah, that makes sense. I can see it.
Have you ever said, I'm gonna do a thing,
Yeah,
and you insist you're gonna do the thing, and then the deadline
you've
comes
not done
up,
it.
and you're like,
Yeah.
ah, shit. And you're like looking at your hands going, what did I do? What was I supposed to do? Oh, oh no. I have done that too many times where Odin has bopped me on the head and gone, all right, do it again. Do it again until you get it right.
For the demographic of the audience listening to this, know an oath with a god is not the same as doing maths homework.
Unless for some fucking reason you owe to do math homework.
Well, I mean, at that point, I have so many questions. So many questions.
For me, it would be my luck that I got oaths to do something silly like that because I suck at math so hard. If we're going to shore up your knowledge, why, Odin? Why? Because I love you.
Well, surely,
And
as a
you
deity
need
of
this.
wisdom, there's got to be some math knowledge in there too.
I'm sure. I had to retake basic algebra a couple of times in college because I just didn't have the head
Calculate
for
Because Odin counts up to 9, he doesn't count up to X.
it. Fuck you, Snow.
Asgard, Midgard, Ljoslheim, Svartalfheim, Hel. He counts up to 9, he doesn't count up to X. No wonder you can't do algebra. This is why you panic when you see astrological charts.
It's really funny.
Okay, we got to discalculate that too.
Oh, I gotta. Oh, my fucking sides
You're
hurt.
welcome.
Thanks. Oh, this is why I love doing this show. I just get fucking roasted right along with my god. Good job. That's one of the things I do love about polytheism, though, is we can make jokes like these, and we're not like looking to the sky, we're wondering where the air thunderbolt's coming
It's
from.
alright, you couldn't count them anyway.
Fuck you. Oh shit! You didn't know you
That's
showed
why
up
I
for
really
a roast,
lightning
did
bolts
you?
are there? N. There are N lightning bolts.
What the fuck does that mean? No, that's not true. I can count to 24. I have them on my arms.
Is that 24 across both or 24 on each? Or have you yet to work that out?
I gotta work that out still. Math is still math, basic math.
I mean, at the minute,
I'm
that's your
sorry.
poetry inspiration. English is a separate class.
Oh God.
Getting the train from the cliff back onto the tracks then. So another thing Lannan is well known for is you're being an artist, your artwork, co-founding Numen Arts. So at what point did your producing and studying art kind of interweave with your religious and devotional practice? And how did that kind of come about for you?
That's a good. Sorry, I'm still laughing. um, that's a good question. So when I was in college and I was learning about all the Mesoamerican arts and just it's so beautiful. Um, I was making a comic. I started aquapunk kind of just as a way to survive college. I was just making it for me. It was something to do outside of schoolwork, and kind of helped me get through like a really depressive stage, because I was like on the other side of the country. I was away from my family, and school was hard. As a you know as a dyscalculic person, it's a learning disability, right? And I didn't even know that was a thing until like last year, 2 years ago. So I can look back on my academic career and go, oh, fuck. Okay. So I was like really depressed in college, and like it's hard. Art is hard. I don't really know if I want to do this. Like maybe I'll just go back home and go to community college, kind of the sophomore blues. And so I started this thing, and I'm like, I'm just gonna do this. This will give me dopamine. I will finish pages, and it will make me feel like I've accomplished something. It'll make me feel like I have control of something in my life. I have control of this story. It's all I got is a story. There's not much to it yet, but we'll see where it goes. And so I started this thing, and I was doing it, and I thought I knew kind of where I wanted to go. I knew where my inspirations were. I'm like, yeah, I like Frankenstein. I like Battlestar Galactica. I like, I like sci-fi stuff. I like Zelda. I'm just gonna kind of throw it all together and see what happens. And I'm like, yeah, I'm 20 years old. I'm gonna get political because I know politics. I'm 20 years old. I know everything. And it was the politics very ham-fisted. They're still ham-fisted, but that's okay. And so I was working on it for a few years, and then it's like the weird stuff started to happen with the story. Um, I kind of go into this a little bit in Numinous, the book, but yeah, weird stuff started to happen. Like synchronicities started to happen in the story that I didn't plan. Um, and for some reason, I don't know why, I didn't really reread any of my work. I didn't like stop writing and I go, let me read what I've done. I was kind of just doing it like a page or a few pages at a time and making it up as I went. And so it started getting like really polytheist. It started getting like these spirit characters started popping up in the story and insisting on becoming main characters. And I'm like, oh, that's weird. I don't know where you came from, but okay, I can give you some real estate on the page. And so I started writing in these characters, and then the main character is being initiated. Oh, that's okay. Let's see where that goes. He's discovering his ancestors, and he's finding out where he came from, and he's finding out, what happens after you die, and oh, he's marrying the god. Okay. And so the story kind of became this spirit house. Um, I want to make it very clear that the gods in the story are not real gods. I made them up kind of as placeholders. But if my character is going to be interacting with spirits, potentially real spirits, I know I've had a couple readers actually have interactions with one of the spirits, which is very cool. I gotta say, it's just cool. Um, I needed a polytheist framework. I needed an animist framework, and so I designed these gods, but I wanted to depict them realistically, and so I know I'm getting a little off base here, but I wanted to depict what like a real polytheist is and how they operate in the world and how they interact with their gods. The gods are not necessarily always there in their face, talking to them face to face, having a face to face conversation. So like these bigger grand gods, we never really see them, but they do stuff, very important stuff. And it's very clear that they kind of are the maintainers, the arbiters of reality. And so, yeah, doing aquapunk kind of taught me a lot about my own path, because the main character, the path that I was charting for the main character in the story was kind of the path that I ended up taking. And it was almost kind of like beat for beat. Like I was a few years behind him, which was kind of weird. I didn't end up marrying any god. I'm not a god spouse, but I thought about it, and
Yet.
don't say that. Don't jinx it.
Is that like saying the Q word
Yeah.
at work?
Shoot. Can we delete that part? So
Good luck.
and yeah, so in marrying, I mean, metaphorically, yes. So he married the god and he killed the god. I'm completely spoiling my own story, but I don't care. He kills the god, and then the god is reborn as a god of his people instead of these other people because his original people abandoned him.
Ooh.
So I kind of, it's more like themes of ancestry and ancestral deities in that way. And so I guess where it's mimicking my path is that I am I am rediscovering the gods of my ancestors and I am bringing them to others. I am facilitating bringing them to a wider group in my community. And that's ultimately what he does. He takes his God and he's like, we have our own God now. And the last book is basically going to be him going, showing everybody, like, look, we have a God. We have our own traditions. We are our own people. We're not just the dregs of society. We are our own people. We are our own culture. Here's our God. Let's start some traditions. And that's kind of going to be the big takeaway of the story. And so, yeah, I was getting really, really deep into that. I'm like, I can't possibly be the only person that this has ever happened to. I can't possibly be the only artist that has had spirits take up residence on the page or made sacred art or made art while in a trance or and it's not just iconography, but like iconography is really important. It's an aspect of it, but there's got to be other people that have had these really weird, very specifically artistic experiences. And so I went digging for examples, famous examples, and I found famous examples, of writers. I remember reading about Stephen King, and he had basically a demonic spirit in the what was it? It was the shape of like just like an ugly dog or something, this mangy dog, and he imagined this dog coming along and like taking a shit on his rug or something in his writing room and leaving, and that was like his interaction with the spirit. But you hear tell of anecdotes of writers going, yeah, this character is just like completely taken over, like it's like they talk to me, or artists, visual artists, painters who get into a flow state and just this stuff comes out that they could never have anticipated, they could never have planned. And it's kind of that bleeding edge of where the artist ends and where the other kind of begins and where they meet. That's something that I was very interested in for a little bit. And I'm still interested in it, but that's kind of where I started Newman Arts. Was I started it as a way to find other people, basically, who had these experiences. So.
And now it's developed into what I could probably best describe in my own words as an artist collective, which is really been
it's been really neat, and it's also been kind of a learning experience on its own. Like I'm really kind of deep into the community management side of things now in three different ways, three different communities, and Newman Arts was kind of an experiment to see what the polytheist world could sustain as far as like a grouping of people by profession rather than by gods. And I don't think we're quite there yet. I don't think that we quite have the social infrastructure as a group of religious minorities I will feed you later, as a group of religious minorities to truly sustain this kind of work, because we're still very, and understandably, and I don't really know another way we could do this, but we're still very demarcated by our pantheons, basically. There's not a lot of cross-pollination. There's not a lot of cross-pollination now. I feel like there was back in the blogging boom when we were all kind of talking to each other and discovering things together and coming up with language and ways to describe our experiences. But the activities kind of settled down, and now we've kind of settled down into our respective paths, our respective traditions. So I think I think trying to get people together by path, at least art wise, maybe was, yeah, a bit premature. I feel like we need to kind of drum up that kind of inter-tradition excitement again, before something like Newman Arts can be really, really meaningful. I have, I've really, yeah, uh, been pleased to get to know everybody that I've met through the project, and um, yeah, like at Teotecatl, Claire. I met Claire. Claire visited Nanaimo just a few months ago. That was awesome. Um, and I've spoken with Tamasu. Um, I don't know how to pronounce the whole name. Tamasu Nofrawa? Nofraua. Okay.
Nofra Ua.
Tamasu
Padamasu
Nofraua.
Nofra
Okay.
Ua.
Yes. I've really, really been pleased to get to know him as well. And I would say, hmm?
Awesome person.
Yeah,
Awesome
yeah,
person.
awesome,
Yeah.
awesome person.
Sorry, please go
Just
ahead.
this like unstoppable force of a person. Um, really cool, really cool energy. And I think my next thing that I want to do with Newman Arts is expand and revise the book and bring these voices in that I've met since then, um, and have them contribute, because I think the book is, as it is very me, very my experience, and I tried researching other perspectives and stuff, but it was, like I said, it was super hard to find this kind of experience. And now that I know some people, like I want to get their voices heard and get their experiences out there. And I tried doing that with a New Arts blog, but a blog is a lot of work. So yeah, I think re-releasing the book is probably going to be the way to go. So that's on my radar, probably the next year or two to do that.
Yeah, I mean it's been really cool because the kind of Newman Arts Collective, you have a very eclectic mix of people, but also of art styles. So they're kind of very different in terms of sort of religious views and practices as well as artists. So it's kind of cool seeing them all kind of in the under the Newman Arts umbrella, as it were. So if you're kind of looking to involve them in a new version of that book or a follow up to that book, whichever way you kind of go about it, that could be really interesting to see.
Yeah, I'm really excited.
Um, yeah. And then you sort of going off of that, you mentioned sort of community building and administrative work in other things. So is that kind of where things like the cloister comes from? And could you maybe sort of talk about how that came about as well?
Yeah, let's see. The cloisters goes back to probably around 2017 originally. It's kind of when I started getting a feeling that my path was taking me, or my devotional path was not taking me towards uh, like a profession. I was not meant to be a priest. I was not meant to be a healer. I was not meant to be most other things that polytheists who kind of want to really dedicate themselves towards something. None of those fit kind of what I wanted to do or what I was being called to do. I was basically being called to think. I was being called to sit around and think and pray and light the incense and meditate and kind of build my life around it. And so I discovered the word contemplative. Like, oh, that sounds really interesting. What do contemplatives do? They contemplate. I'm like, there are people that contemplate gods as like a vocation. Like, that's dope. That's so cool. And then I kind of I found Danica Swanson of at the time Blackstone Hermitage, and she was kind of keeping the fire going for at the time her community. It was a very small community, and her blog. Um, and I met Danica. I met her back in 2017. That's right. It would have been like 2017. I met her. I stayed with her in Portland. It was a beautiful place, beautiful apartment. She had really done a really good job organizing everything, and I kind of got to know her a little bit. I got to know what polytheist monasticism meant to her. Like the word monastic is kind of scary. It's kind of a heavy word. It's very Christian to begin with, but it also kind of has these very dour notes of, you know, uh, 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 monks wearing hoods and walking down dark, stony hallways, chanting and getting up at 3 in the morning and to do, what is it? Lauds? I don't remember what the hours are. But it has this very specific kind of feel. And then the polytheist monasticism anthology came out, and I snatched that up. And I was reading about all these other people that were interested in living lives like that, living lives of contemplation, living in quiet, living just well-ordered lives in dedication to the gods. And I'm like, that sounds really good. That sounds good. That sounds like a vocation that I can see myself doing. And the image kind of haunted me, of living that way. At that point, it actually seemed kind of inevitable. Like at some point in my life, I'm like, that's what I'm going to be doing. That is what's waiting for me. At some point, it's going to happen sooner if I make steps to make it happen sooner, or it'll happen later, but it's going to happen no matter what. And that life would let me make my art. It would give me the space to make my art, and it would let me continue that journey of figuring out what reality is. And I would do that with my gods. My gods would be my guides and my teachers, and my life would revolve around them, as it kind of already does. In many ways, I kind of already live with a monastic mindset of, I go out in the world, but I don't quite belong there. That's not where my work is. Or engaged monasticism, I would say I would do engaged monasticism, which is work in the world, but not work of the world. I don't have career. I don't have like a career that takes up my entire life. I don't have career ambitions. My goal is security, so that I can provide for my community and I can continue my work, which is just thinking, thinking about the gods and reality, and then potentially writing about it, thinking about writing what I'm thinking about. And yeah, as somebody that doesn't have kids, I have no children. I don't have any siblings with children. I have no first cousins. I am an only child and only grandchild. So I am quite aware of the sort of the existential implications of that for myself. And I'm okay. I'm okay with that. I am okay with being forgotten after I die, within a generation or two. I'm okay with that. And that's something that monastics are okay with too. The monastic call is not one of renown. It's not one of recognition. It's not one of, um, you know, having your uh, having your contributions to society be attributable to you and remembered long after you died. And I know that's not a very pagan perspective, to be okay with being forgotten. Um, but the goal of the monastic is to walk away from that. So my being okay with that puts me at fundamental odds with society. And that's kind of this film that I sense between myself and many others that I encounter, relatives, friends, uh, coworkers. There's just that fundamental sense of, I'm going to die. I'm going to be forgotten shortly after I'm dead, and it's fine. I will be with the gods. I will be where they put me. I will be scattered to the winds. In Mexica cosmology, there's three, not souls, but animating essences, basically three spirits that make up your existence. Those will be put elsewhere, maybe reused, maybe just, I will be recycled. I will become something else, and I won't be me, and that's fine. And that's sort of a really fundamental thing about monasticism, is that even monastics in, whatever other traditions, when they write stuff, when they produce material, when they contribute to their traditions, they don't. A lot of them do it anonymously. Like the author of The Cloud of Unknowing is anonymous. This great mystic masterwork. We have no idea who wrote it. And that's exactly as they intended. So if I'm going to have things that outlive me, I would rather them stand on their own. They don't need me. I'll be dead. They don't need me. I don't need them. I'll be with the gods. That's it. That's what matters.
It sounds like you have gotten very used to the understanding and idea of annihilation. And that is a level of depth and maturity that I have heard of very few people being willing to contemplate or engage with. That takes a lot. Where do you get your strength and your courage to look into oblivion and say, "Yep, all right"?
No,
And I don't mean to sound glib
exactly
about
how
it.
glib you need to be about it, right? It's I had a near-death experience while I was taking shrooms, and I learned that my body does not like shrooms. I took all of a gram, which for most people is like a starting dose, apparently. I took a gram of uh, I took a gram of penis envy. And I guess something about the heightened visuals of this strain overloaded my serotonin system, and I got serotonin syndrome. And so I probably should have called an ambulance, actually, but I didn't. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. I feel like I am being poisoned violently, which I technically was. And I'm like, well, this is interesting. Let's see what's going on here. And so I went under the cloak. I put a blanket on and I wrapped myself up tight. And I spent the next 4 hours in misery. and in and out of very vivid dreams. And the spirit from my book, Aquapunk, was there, and he's like, "Okay, we got to do some work on you." And so I don't know what he did. He did something. He opened up something, changed something, um, and I came out of it very sick. Yeah, I was sweating. I had fevers. Uh, the scariest thing about serotonin syndrome is muscle weakness. Basically, you lose muscle function. I couldn't stand. I could barely sit up. Um, I could not really breathe without forcing it. It felt like, I had like 100-pound weight on my chest. So making sure that I was breathing was kind of really important. But I also saw, um, I remember I was swimming and I dunked my head. I don't know. I was swimming under, but I dunked my head up, whatever. Hallucinations. So I stuck my head in through the veil, basically, and it was like peeking around. I'm like, oh, okay, this is the other side of the veil. And I just remember just seeing colors. It was just everything was very colorful, these colors mixing together. And it was like, no, this is what reality is. It's just this mixing of things. Things are just changing and mixing and flowing into other things and then disappearing and then flowing back and it's all connected. It's all the same thing. And I said, oh, that's pretty cool. And then a spirit came along and said, you need to meditate for the rest of your life. You need to meditate a lot for the rest of your life, and that's how you're going to really figure out what all this means. And I said, sweet, I'm gonna really start doing that. That's very important for me. And kind of that was the start of me um, beginning the process of being okay with that. And meditation has really helped. I wouldn't say that I've achieved anything like no self, or I haven't even approached achieving kensho or the sudden realization that a lot of Buddhists talk about. But I feel like beginning to see my ego for what it really is. Like I still have an ego. We all do. I still do stupid stuff. I still have emotions that are sometimes frustrating and silly and petty and all that stuff. But beginning kind of the separation, I feel like, where I can kind of look at the things that I do and go, it doesn't actually really matter in the end because, yeah, I'm gonna go be with my gods event someday. And then after that, who knows? Whatever, it's fine.
I'm curious, sort of, how do you balance all of that with being an artist and with being a writer and so on? Because a lot of creative works, people talk about how they'll outlast their creators and kind of after us, you're kind of remembered for this picture you did, this song that you wrote, this article that you wrote, this book that you released, etc., etc. Sort of, how do you think about that alongside this idea of when you're gone, and that's fine, and you'll be with the gods, and this kind of theurgic view, if you will, and also balancing kind of ego and meditation with creative works as well.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I knew I was going to get asked that question. Um, the answer that just came to me is that it's all just kind of a ritual. Um, yeah, you might be remembered for a ritual that you did, but that ritual, once it's over, is over. That performance is over. So even though I'm not a performing artist, everything I do is a performance. All my art that I make is a performance, and if someone wants to preserve that performance for whatever reason, they really like it, or they think it's dumb and they want to make fun of it forever, then they can do that. But for me, it's the synergy of the now, of making it right now. That's the nice thing about comics, is that it's page by page, and I can do a page in a day. And I'm like, sweet, I finished a thing today. I don't know if I'm ever going to finish this. I could get hit by a bus tomorrow, and I will never finish any of my stories. But I got this done today. That's awesome. Um, and then maybe tomorrow I'll get to make another page. Wouldn't that be awesome if I got to make another page tomorrow? Um, and it's all, even when it doesn't feel like it's in service to the gods, it is. Everything is, whether I like it or not. Um, Even when it feels like it's for me, I am for them. So doing things, the old saying, or the saying that people like to say now, of securing your oxygen mask first. By securing my own oxygen mask, I am able to distribute the oxygen masks. I am able to live in service. If I take care of myself, if I do things that bring me joy, um, then I can continue to serve the gods, and I can continue doing all that wonderful thinking and contemplating that I like to do. Um, but it's ritual to me. That's what it is. It's ritual. It's not documentary preservation. I'm not creating objects. I'm not creating art objects that are supposed to outlast me. I'm performing the role of artist.
Reminds me a bit of our talk with Dr. Sledge on why we leave things behind, on how they're left behind, on the quality of the things that we leave behind and what it speaks to. It also reminds me of some of the archaeological digs that I've read about in different books, like The Viking Way and The Norse Sorceress, where in some cases they would have horses standing up, or they would place them in certain fashion around their owners, likewise dogs or weapons. It's not merely for the sake of, well, we're going to bury them with their stuff, but it's the entire piece is a performance, and it says something. I think from that perspective of being ready to encounter your own death at any moment, accepting that, and that when your life becomes a dance or performance, what it sounds like to me is your life is a living offering.
I like
and
that.
I find that to be a very beautiful thing.
That makes it sound much better than it feels like from the inside. Much more I don't know, like, it's from where I'm standing, it's just like, yeah, just fucking around, right? But it's no, I appreciate it. It's good to be kind of like,
Sorry, I'm a
knocked out
poet.
of
It's what I do.
my own perspective, right? And knocked out of the contemplative's perspective, which is like, oh no, I'm still making things, and I'm still I'm still being perceived by other human beings in what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm. Which is hilarious to me, because you mentioned in your most recent blog about how Zen perspective on things is stop looking at the fucking moon and just look at the moon. And like, you come from this very contemplative perspective, but also your practice is Zen informed or Zen based, if I'm not mistaken. And so there's this interesting tension that I'm hearing between the Zen impulse to be in that moment and to be the moment, and then your perspective of, but I want to think about this, goddammit. It's interesting because it doesn't feel like you're fighting with yourself. It's just that
Yeah.
you're inhabiting
And
different
I
parts
mean,
of
maybe
yourself at
that's
different
the
times.
bipolar. I don't know, but you
Can you talk a bit
definitely
about
picked
that?
up on something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, which is like, why do I have, these, I always seem to have these just two influences kind of like doing stuff to each other all the time. But I like is um Zen is very non-dual. Um Mexican polytheism, the Mexican cosmology is on its surface very dualist. But it's ultimately non-dual as well. And so I kind of try to bring a non-dual perspective to these parts of me that feel like they're contradictory or they are incompatible. Like, I'm a contemplative on one hand, and then on the other hand, I'm making a comic right now. I started a new comic that's about uh, uh, an ex special ops World War III veteran in a post-apocalyptic wasteland turned mercenary, and there's like a lot of gunfights and irreverent violence and things. So there's like this very irreverent part of me that just thinks things are like silly and goofy, and action is silly and goofy, and then there's the other part of me that's like, I'm also at the same time extremely devout. I'm an extremely devout polytheist, and yeah, don't fuck with my sacred space, and I meditate all the time, and then when I'm done meditating, I get up and I go to my computer and I drop guns. But there's, I don't know, there's not, it seems like there is a contradiction, but there isn't, because it's all that performance, right? When I'm meditating, I am playing the role of meditator. When I'm drawing, I'm playing the role of artist. And also this goofy comic about this soldier is teaching me a lot about war gods and soldiering gods and stuff. And it's an archetype I've been fascinated by for many years. As a trans person, I kind of latched on to the ideal of a soldier as this metaphor for the trans experience, or your body not being your own, right? So I'm kind of getting to know them from that angle, which is a lot of fun.
Oh yeah.
Oh no, totally fine.
Sorry, I went off in Odin space for a minute.
I suppose one thing that I'm sort of thinking sort of the last sort of 10 minutes or so of discussion here is that you're not confusing or conflating or combining monasticism and asceticism. You're not trying to be without material goods. You're not trying to live as a hermit out in the wilderness. You're not trying to do without electricity and running water and all those things that people think of when they think of a monastic ascetic. You're going about things differently. I was wondering if you could maybe sort of talk about how you kind of navigate that, because I think for a lot of people, when they see another pagan blogger is talking about monasticism and going it alone, they kind of roll their eyes and go, oh yeah, it's a group of people talking about how great they are because they're on their own. And they kind of see a lot of contradictions there in how
No,
they
that's a
are
good
or
question
aren't
too.
understanding different things. So I
I
was
know
curious
a
on your
lot of
kind of
people in the
thoughts there.
cloister do kind of see themselves as more the ascetic type. Um, yeah, not taking sexual romantic partners, or avoiding certain foods, or dressing a certain way. And honestly, like the ascetic ideal, being the hermit in the woods, it's really sexy. It sounds really sexy. Like uh who like the idea of living in a cabin in the woods and not talking to anybody sounds amazing. Like I feel like, oh, I could get so much writing done. I could get so much praying done. You know, chop wood, carry water. I'd be able to do that literally. And it's like, no, I need people. And also, I have never lived alone in my life. I've always been around a ton of people. I come from that big Mexican family. Um, I like being around people. And honestly, the even in most Christian monastic orders, you're around people all the time. There's so much politics going on. You're constantly navigating difficult personalities, and you're living with other people who you don't, when they come in, you don't really know them. And you're all just kind of coming together to try and accomplish this thing, but you're trying to accomplish it together. The togetherness is what's important about monasticism. And if you want to become a hermit, you generally have to earn that. You have to prove that you're actually going to put that to use for the community. You have to prove that you are spiritually mature enough, that you're psychologically sound. You have to prove that that's what you're truly called to do is live in isolation. And you have to be vetted by your prior, your abbot. Um, and it's something you work towards. Um, it's not, they want to make sure you do it for the right reasons, that you're not doing it to get away from everybody else in the monastery because, you don't like Joe Schmo a few cells down. You don't, that you get sensory overload or what have you, and this is your way out. It's not supposed to be an escape. It's supposed to be a deepening of your vocation. And it takes a very specific kind of person to want that, and it's not for everybody. Obviously it's not for everybody, but it's also it's not like a mark of specialness. It's not a mark of special wisdom. It doesn't mean you're closer to, just going with Christians here, it doesn't mean you're closer to God. It doesn't mean anything. It's just a thing that some people are called to do, and that's it. Like being the cook. Some people are called to be the cook. In Zen temples, being the cook is a very prestigious role to play, to be the tenzo. Dogen wrote an entire treatise on proper behavior for the tenzo and how they should approach cooking in the kitchen, and how they needed to keep things clean, and this is how you organize the kitchen, and this is the proper way to cut things. So there's different ways to approach being a monastic, obviously. I remember also, this is a documentary I still need to watch, but I saw a synopsis for a documentary for this nun who was terminally ill, and it was called Sister Una Lived a Good Death, I think was the name of the documentary. And they sold me on it. This nun was a whiskey drinking, cigar smoking, swearing nun. And she had been a nun for many years, and she was clearly nunning correctly. She was nunning in a way that garnered respect, and she contributed to her community. And I think she did things like, charity and volunteer work and all kinds of stuff. Yes, I remembered the title correctly. That's good. And so I have a subforum on the cloister called Engage Monasticism, and it's for people who are called to do stuff in the world. And for me, all of my work is in the world right now, even though I am apart from it in a way. There's that part of me that's never fully here. But everything I have to do right now is here. So this is where everybody is.
So kind of how would you differentiate then, or would you even differentiate then between, say, a particularly devout practitioner who maybe does ritual regularly and then goes about their day just kind of thinking about the gods periodically throughout their day, someone who self-identifies as a mystic and someone who self-identifies as a monastic? How would you
What was the first one
differentiate
again? Was
between
it
those three? And if
just
so,
a
sort of
devotional?
how?
Okay, so like a devotional polytheist and a
Just someone who's just very sort of
I don't
devout
know.
and yeah.
I think trying to
Hmm.
find hard lines between them would be kind of a mistake. Because I think they're all ultimately all trying to accomplish the same thing, which is service. Um, but it's figuring out what that service looks like and ultimately serving the gods, right? But I think it and this is the one thing I'll take a really hard stance on is that I think we should be living in service to our communities in addition to our gods because our gods do not exist separate from our communities. Our gods are inner communities. So we can't really serve the gods and then go, fuck everybody else. We can't, that's, to me, that's a hypocritical notion. Our gods created us to live in community. They guided us on how to build community. They, um, they contributed to they gave us language. They gave us art. They gave us marriage. They gave us all of these things that bring us together as people, and to ignore that to me is a fundamental error. Um, and this is actually a massive conversation that I had with Atef when she visited, was what we should be doing as polytheists to contribute to our communities, and why we kind of really suck at it. Kind of really suck at um, sticking together and doing the hard graft of just like listening to each other, um, uh, being there for each other, um, putting in the work to just maintain relationships between people. We're not very good at that because I don't know. I don't know why. But it seems like to many of us, maintaining relationships with the gods is more important than maintaining relationships with each other. We will go out and do the ritual. We will do the ritual every damn day for 9 days, 13 days, whatever, a whole year. Um, we will fly across the world to go do the whatever ritual, the initiation in the country of origin that the pantheon came from. But if uh, our elderly like neighbor is, can't go get groceries, like why are we not helping them? Or if a member of the polytheist community like needs something, like why, or if they're if somebody's not doing well mentally, why aren't we checking in with them? Um, why are we letting those relationships languish? And I think that's part of why so many people drop off and go back to Christianity or go back to atheism or go back to what they were doing before, is because those community connections were there, and they're not here. Or they're not as strong here because our focus is on the gods, when it should be on the entire world and everything in it, including all the people in it. Um, yes, they made us. Why? It's the same thing, right? So, um, yeah, I think roles like devotional polytheist, mystic, monastic is all window dressing to what the the work really is. The work is helping to maintain what the gods have given us. Um, and that's each other. They have given us each other.
And I think that was very well said. But I think that I'm seeing a sort of through line in your writing over the years, and sort of as different topics have come up tonight, where, as you said, it's very much your practice and worldview is having you in the world, but not necessarily of the world. It's very much seeing the connections between your devotion and the community and the gods and your artwork, and all
Yeah,
these
it's kind
things
of
are kind of
I'm circling
mirroring
I'm
the same
circling
points, I
something. I'm
think.
trying to figure out what that is.
So it's no, it's really
I
cool,
think
and it's
I'm
interesting
trying.
seeing that you're kind of walking the talk.
Mhm.
If Saren says I'm doing, then I'm doing, I guess.
You're doing.
Mm. And not
I mean,
thinking about doing.
The thinking is also a
You're
performance.
doing and not thinking about doing.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm.
Which
I
performance
mean,
comes
isn't the
before the
doing
other
a performance? It's like a koan, isn't it? Yes.
I mean, one of the things that I really love about polytheism in general and our communities is there's not a world denying component to it, that there's no need to separate yourself from the dross of everyday life because everybody gets dross, everybody gets dirty, everybody
Everybody
gets
slips on the
rained on,
slippery earth and
everybody
falls.
gets,
Yeah.
the rough and the good. And it's just right. So
And because it's flat, we're
we're
then hanging
here.
on. Sorry, carry on, Sarah.
God damn it. Uh
It's like a Super Smash Brothers
Just a
stage.
chain of people
Fucking
hanging
broke
on
me.
to the edge because we all slipped.
I mean
hmm We're all waiting for
Oh,
the
that's a
pipe to
koan.
jump through.
oh god.
Each Saturn return, it's a different level.
I it's like I said, it's one of the joys that we don't have a world denying component to this, that um something that you keep talking about both in your blog and here has been, this notion of in the world, of the world. And even that performance of separation, I think, is a necessary one because it gives you the distance to be able to contemplate, which is the performance that you need to do in order to take that next step into becoming. And what I'm hearing throughout this process, both of your blog, your community work, your monasticism, your work writ large, is you need to take that time to think, to contemplate, to become. And it's something that our world actually is really rather short on, at least here in the modern Western countries where everything is breakneck pace, or your attention is being ripped in so many different ways. The intentionality of contemplation, of being seen contemplating, is something we don't
Yeah.
actually see examples of in our society much anymore. Um, I'm thinking back to like some of the PBS specials I used to watch where you would have lively debates on a stage and there would be one philosophical question that would take up the entire hour debate. We don't have
Yes.
that anymore. Even as
How
a
do you go about
baseline
how do you
of
start the
how do we
process of
go about
thinking about
thinking
stuff,
about
right?
things?
And that's something that's fun to think about. Um, but yeah, you're right. Like I try to keep it in perspective that, there has always been a world. As long as humans have lived together, there's always been a world to turn away from or to pivot away from. And the world that we
Right.
have now is, fundamentally not that different than the world 2,000 years ago, 6,000 years ago, right? We have big clusters of people living together and getting involved with each other and gossiping and cheating on each other and squabbling and starting families and oops, sorry. And it's like,
Oh man, you're gonna squash that idea of the golden age? Oh fuck, I don't know.
oh,
But how can
Don't-
we
don't
make
tell
it
the
great
voters.
again if that wasn't when it was great to begin with? Okay. See you next
I may not
Tuesday.
be afraid of death, but I can still feel dread for things like that. I'm afraid of the
I'm not
U.S.
afraid
election
of death,
results.
but I'm afraid of
Fair.
certain voting demographics.
Um,
Actually, I before you break, I have a question about um so your work is titled Rotwork, right? And so since a lot of your work is about contemplating after doing the thing and contemplating before doing the thing, when you talk about dread, what is it you mean?
that's a really good question. That's a really good question. Yeah, like what is dread in the face of all the stuff that I just talked about? Um, yeah, like I the way that I think
Right.
about the world, the way I see the world is kind of in layers, I guess. And on the one layer is sort of the world,
Mhm.
the aforementioned world that one can turn away from, and fuga mundi, turning away from um, things. And then there's the other layer of the long view, the long human view, right? What we may know. And then beyond that, there is other views. There's
Mhm.
the long view. There's the geologic view. There's the cosmic view. There's the divine view of things. And
Mhm.
I can kind of move through a couple of the first layers, right? And and then the first layer, I can dread things. I can dread um, going to the dentist and having to get a cavity filled. Nobody likes that. Um, it's painful. It's expensive. It's just not fun. It tells you that you're not taking your care of your teeth as good as you maybe thought you were. Um, and but hmm? Yes,
So,
anticipating
so
something
you're not
that
talking
is
dread in
going
terms of
to
an
be
existential
painful
process. You're
on
talking about
some level.
anticipation.
Somewhere in there, there's going to be pain involved. Somewhere in there, there's going to be misfortune involved, or my ego is going to be hurt, or somebody I know may be on their deathbed. Um, that's kind of all mixed up in those layers. Like,
I find that really
oh,
fascinating
interesting.
because a lot of my dread takes place more outer. So like the further out from my personal communities and humanity I go, like I know I'm going to lose people. Like I'm not liking the idea, but I don't have a feeling of dread about it. What I have a feeling of dread about is the big stuff that I have very little human impact on. Like I can look at climate change and go, I can do fuck all about that, and that terrifies the shit out of me. Um, so a lot of my sensation of dread comes in loss of power, whereas I find this really fascinating because of the gods that I work with and the relationships I hold.
And as
Well
someone
said.
with a background in studying Buddhism who is now a Stoic that reads Nietzsche, this is really interesting.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Something happens, I go,
I
yep.
Yeah, like if it happens, like I can be annoyed, irritated, angered, etc. I will feel the temporary emotion and then get moving on with whatever needs moving on. Um, but when it comes to the big existential stuff, I tend to sometimes have a harder time looking that thing in the face because I know there's not a lot that I can do to fix it or to do anything to it.
I mean, that's why Lovecraftian horror works. It's entirely existential dread. It's you can't understand it, you can't comprehend it, you can't beat it, you can't process it. There is no recognizing it. Like to see it is to go insane. Be afraid of that. Be afraid of fear and the incomprehensible and the unprocessable. That's what how.
And yet there's a part of me that wants to dive head first into that and understand it.
Mm. And that's what all those romantic Austrians and Germans were painting in the 18th century.
You're in Odinson, of
Mhm.
course, you want to dive head into it.
Interesting. So much of this conversation as we're wrapping up reminds me of uh, I read this. It's from a arch conservative writer, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head.
Archie.
The fear and the fear and the sublime. Um, and he was talking about how sublimity and fear are very close to each other because one is needed to experience the other. And I just find, while I don't care for many of his conclusions or political philosophy, that has always kind of stuck with me of the fear and the sublime being very close to each other. And so a lot of the conversations about dread and thoughts and how your monastic perspective works and your own
Yeah, it got
perspective
really
on
soupy.
Buddhism and Stoicism and Nietzsche. So I'm really enjoying this soup because it's uh this is why I love this show. This is why I love these exchanges because we can sit down and enjoy some good soup.
I mean, the dread I think about the most is the judge in Megacity 1.
That's totally fair.
Those songs are so good. So good.
Right?
Oh, they are.
As a lifelong
Man.
fan who inherited a collection from the 70s of 2000 AD comics.
Oh, you
yeah.
lucky
So good.
prick.
So good. Enjoy it.
I'm in
Enjoy the collection.
England. Like, come
Oh,
on.
true, but damn.
Mhm. It's my weekly post. Yeah, it's so good. And you read the old ones, and it's like they weren't even trying
So
to disguise the fact they're just poking
Oh
fun
yeah,
at
heavy
Thatcher
metal
here.
is so
Like, this
good.
is amazing.
No, it's cool. So good.
That's what it was. That's right.
2000 AD and Judge Dredd and Rogue Trooper, and it's so good.
So, um, I really appreciate you sitting down with us and exploring just all of these things with us and being so open and vulnerable and
This
be
has been
willing
super fun.
to
Thank you so much for
really
having me.
dig down
Yeah,
deep.
it kind of all
Like
did
this
come
has
out
been
of
really fun,
word salad,
and I
didn't
would
it?
love to do this again.
No, you're good. I think you
Thinking
are more
about things works.
comprehensible
Yeah.
than you feel.
Your contemplation was well received. Your
Gotta go back to
performance,
the drawing
No,
board.
yes,
talking
it
worked.
does.
Thinking about talking backfired. Mm.
So,
You can find
before
me
we go our
at
separate
the
ways,
aforementioned blog. That's
where
probably going
can
to be the
folks
best place to
find
go.
you
I have
on?
links there to other things. But the blog is Rotwork, ROTWORK, .wordpress.com. I'm an old WordPress head now, I guess. God, I feel old. One of us. Yes. OG. But yeah, that's
One
pretty
of
much a place.
us.
You can from there you can find Newman Arts, you can find the Cloister, you can find my personal art stuff, my goofy comics that I draw. And I think I have a link to my fine art stuff there too. If I just made all that up, then you can also go to bone.blue/card. BONE.BLUE/CARD. And that's like a more typical link tree. Okay, cool.
I think last I looked, most
Sweet.
of those links
Yeah,
were
I
still
don't
there on
have the memory that I
Rotwork.
used to.
But
I think that's
Bone Blue
another
Card,
bipolar thing.
also
But,
good.
yeah, but it could also just be the internet and all
Who
that fun
does?
stuff.
Oh, well,
But thank you so much.
aging and yeah.
So, absolutely. And Snow, where can people find you?
You can find my stuff at snowthegoth.com or linktree/snowthegoth. All my things are there. Things what I be doing. Emily, where can people find your stuff?
You can find me at streakingfate.wordpress.com. Santh, where can people find you?
All right, you can find me at saranth.wordpress.com. You can find me on patreon.com/SaranthOdinson. And you can also find me on Three Pagans on tap. We're going to be doing a special election day post-election show. It'll be at 7 p.m. or I'm sorry, excuse me, 9 p.m. EST. It'll be on YouTube Live. So you can just go to our Three Pagans on tap, which will be in the show notes, or you can just find us through your search engine. You can also find this show at patreon.com/aroundgrandfatherfire. Please, please, please join the Discord. You do not have to be a member of the Patreon to join, but we definitely would welcome any and all support. Please also, if you can, give us all the stars on Apple Music, Google, every platform you could find us on. We also go through Podbean, so please do
Much
find us
like
there.
children going to the dentist or Americans going to vote, we like getting stars.
So I really appreciate everybody showing up, and I want to thank you for all of our supporters in the Discord, on the Patreon, and just out there in cyberspace. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we will see you next time around the fire.